Welcome back to another episode of Keoni Chats. So I'm going to try a new intro format because I'll be honest with all the viewers and listeners out there that this is probably like my 100th take of trying to record this intro, and it's sometimes exhausting, and sometimes I don't know what to say. I try to rehearse it on the car ride home from work because obviously this is an extracurricular thing. So yeah, I got news today, or I guess news this past week, that my cholesterol might be getting kind of high. And, some of the advice the doctor said was like lower saturated fats and work out regularly. And in my mind, I was like, I'm already working out regularly. What's going on? Obviously, it's the diet that, I was on a diet for about a month leading up to my birthday. And then I just kind of let myself go, but I still kept active lifestyle. So I still would go for a run twice a week, let's say, and then go to the gym once a week. So 3 out of the 5 days of the regular week, I would be working out. And then with Sundays being football or Saturdays being getting an episode out. So that's been what's on my mind lately. Just trying to, it's so small, but thinking about what's going on in your system on the inside and just getting that kind of information where, hey, you need to be a little healthier does motivate me to work out more, but then also it does mentally kind of get in the way a little bit. So mental health is something I always try to talk about on these episodes. And, my mental health right now is just thinking about like, why how do I have this? This is ridiculous. So we also touch base on that in this week's episode with Dominique, or some people know him as Dom. And I've known Dom since I was so young. He is my brother's age, so about 2 years older than me. And we talk about mental health, and we talk about the kind of mental health that an actor has to go through when it comes to trying to live up to an image that could be just impossible. But we talk about that and just so many more things that I don't want to tease at all. But I had a great time on this episode because Dominique is such a, he's my brother's age, which means that he's had such a long impact in my life that it just felt like an honor to get him on the show. So stick around for the episode. Hopefully I didn't bore you guys. But so before we dive into my chat with Dominique, I want to remind everyone that I am still reviewing all of DC animated movies, and 2017 is officially live. So to get to that, you go to keoniconlu.com, keoniconlu.com. Go to the menus button if you're looking on your phone, or if you're looking on a laptop, click the blogs tab. Look for the DC photo and then click 2017, and then there it is. So you might see that some entries have 2 years, some have 1 year. I just try to do about 5 films per entry. It just seems like a good number to me. So check it out. If you think I'm wrong, please let me know. If you like the review, even let me know. Just let me know what you think. Because, even though maybe no one's watching or no one's listening to this podcast or reading the blogs, I'm still going to produce it because I have fun with it, and it's a great way for me to always learning and always growing. So yeah, I'd love to hear some feedback. Let me know. But if you are watching this interview on YouTube, or you're listening to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon Music, I hope you enjoy my chat with Dominique Huynh. Okay, I've had this really bad habit lately of starting the interview and forgetting to press record, or it just goes automatically to pause. So I checked my bases. We're good. Officially going. Dominique, longtime friend of not just me, but the whole Conlu family. I'm
Mhm.
so excited to have you on because we've had such a long history, and we've worked together on a few really, 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 really young projects. How are you
Yes,
doing
you were in one of my first films. Yeah.
today? My I see my IMDb page is not updated. But that's okay.
Right now, I'll get on that.
That's all I ask. That's
I,
all.
I wish I had that footage to give you of that Civil War film. I think that'd be fun to see.
This like that one, and then I remember so clearly that it was Rolando and I were in an alley, we're playing cops, and
Yeah,
I just couldn't
yeah.
stop smiling. I was like, the camera's on me. This is so cool. I need to be serious though. This is not working
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Oh man, yeah. So when I reached out to you to schedule this interview, this was about mid-September. We had some wildfires go on in Oregon, which led to you coming back home. The prodigal son returns to take care of the family. How are they doing? And you mentioned before we started recording that they're in Milwaukee, and how are they adjusting to that side of Oregon versus comfy old Beaverton?
Right. Yeah, I mean, we're still adjusting. And yeah, I came home because of COVID, actually, just because it was really bad in LA. And I just happened to get here a few days before the wildfires happened. And I'm glad I was here to kind of help support my family because we were kind of in a possible evacuation zone. And we had to kind of pack up things and be ready to leave. And that was very scary. And this is a house they had just bought. It was kind of like their dream home, and it was a very sad thing to see uh, all the fear that was coming up. But I'm glad things turned out okay, and everything has kind of subsided and settled, and everyone's very happy now, thankfully.
Oh, yeah. So I remember your childhood home back in Beaverton had a lot
Mm-hmm.
of plants, a lot of wildlife in the front yard. Is
Mm-hmm.
that same kind of design carried over to this new Milwaukee home, or is it just something completely different?
Well, yeah, there's a garden in this house. It's a really beautiful garden, and we all love to cook, so it's nice to go out there and just get the fresh produce and whatever. And but yeah, my parents aren't going to do any more landscaping. In the old house, it was all stuff they did. Landscape by hand. A lot of stuff that we kids did too. We spent a lot of summers shoveling gravel and digging trenches and planting trees. But yeah, they don't want to do any of that work here in this house. But plus, it's beautifully set up. The garden that the previous owners um, made is gorgeous.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. I remember those projects where my dad would be like, "Hey, we're gonna build a retaining wall, and I need you to recruit your friends to help out because I'm an older man and I can't ask my friends." I'm like, "Dad,
Right.
you totally could."
Yeah. But I have to say, as annoying as all those times were, I think it builds character.
Yeah,
We got like a work ethic that a lot of this younger generation doesn't have. I think,
that's true.
we sound like old men. Yeah.
I know. You're so you and my brother are both currently 31 and I'm just got to 29. So I was talking to a coworker and I told her like, "Oh yeah, I'm 29." She's like, "You're almost 30. How do you feel?" I was like, "Why? Why?
Yeah.
Why would you bring that up to me?" What
Right.
was that like hitting the dirty 30s as everyone calls it?
It was good. There was always that trepidation of going into it. Oh my God, my youth is over. But I feel like it was a big indicator for me to like, okay, it's time to get your stuff together and improve your life and take it to a better place and start applying yourself more because it is true, playtime's kind of over and when you're in your early 20s, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this by this age and all that. When that doesn't happen, you kind of gotta reassess and recommit. And so I did like turning 30. I did overall.
Yeah, I know I could feel the song, was it closing time, starting to play.
Oh yeah,
When it
yeah.
gets like maybe like was it August of next year, I think that will really just echo in my head. It's closing time. Time for you to go
Yeah,
home
yeah.
is,
Hmm.
I was gonna recite the whole song, but I was like, probably not.
Yeah, yeah. I will say though, turning 30, you do feel the body is not what it used to be. And you mentioned before we started that you're a runner, right? And
Yeah.
I started running again, and I realized I have to do a lot more maintenance. more stretching, ice baths, just to maintain.
Yep. Yep. And then like even after your run, maybe after you get home, you shower and whatnot, you kind of hobble around a little bit. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel it.
Yeah.
I feel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
you've did a couple marathons, correct? I want to say within, I saw them on your Instagram where you ran a marathon.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my research wasn't as extensive as that, but how
Mm.
was that
Okay.
kind of experience to be in organized running event?
Yeah, I only did one marathon. It was 2018, and it was, or no, 2019. I'm sorry. Yeah, 2019, and very ill-advised because it was that whole thing of like, oh my God, I can't. Was I 30 by then? Yeah, no, that was the year I turned 30, and to my 30th birthday, I had like gone to Vietnam to find my roots, and then I was like, I'm going to do a marathon this year because I'm turning 30 and I need to get into gear. And I was driven by ego and pride, because up until then, it was like I was fairly fit, always very athletic. I was
Yep.
like, oh, I could do a marathon,
Yeah.
It's like I've run before, and I didn't really train. The most I had run up until that point was probably like 12 miles, and that was very difficult.
Mm.
So doing the marathon, very nervous, and I was able to do 12 miles, easily. But then once I went halfway, I was like, this is awful. So it was this terrible trudge of like running, starting, stopping, cramp. First time trying those gel packs because they were handing out, and I just got terrible stomach pain, and it was not good, and it was a big wake up call for me. But since then, I had gotten back into running, and
Yeah.
so and I've run a couple I actually did a half marathon, a virtual half marathon earlier this year during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
A couple weeks last month, I just ran a half marathon just for fun, just because I like that discipline and ritual of it.
Sure. Yeah. And I just remind me. Did you ever watch the TV show How I Met Your Mother?
No, I'm aware of it, but I've never watched it.
So there's an episode where it's Jason Segel and Neil Patrick Harris. Jason Segel's like, oh, I'm supposed to, like, he's training for a marathon, and he ends up not going because he hurt himself. And Barney instead just jumps in his place, and he's actually able to. He runs the whole thing, and they're like, I'm not sure if he's actually running. So they check on him. He's actually running, and so he gets on the train because it's in New York to head back home, and then he sits down, and then he just cannot get up because his legs are just not working at all.
Yeah.
Exactly what I imagined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you mentioned you went to Vietnam. How was that experience? Did you rediscover your roots?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with that, it's very interesting because growing up, my parents fled Vietnam during the war, and they were young. My dad was probably 13, 14 when he left, and my mom was probably 10, 11. And so their view and their experience of Vietnam was, a war-torn country, a lot of turmoil, a lot of poverty. So that's what we were taught growing up. And so that's why I never wanted to go back there. And also, since they came over during the war, they faced a lot of racism and were kind of ostracized because of their race. So they kind of instilled I guess, negative attitude towards being Vietnamese. And of course, I got teased for being Asian growing up. So it kind of, formed all these unhealthy views in my mind about who I was and what my race was. But then, I started watching a lot of Anthony Bourdain's shows, like No Reservations and things like that. And he always spoke so fondly about Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And then more travel shows, started going to Vietnam, and I read like Anthony Bourdain's books. And then, I mean, he said, made Vietnam sound like such a romantic place. And then I started talking to people who were my age who had gone. I was like, oh, you need to go. So then, like, when I was 30, I wanted to go. And I went with my dad, actually, which is very interesting. And he was very reluctant to go at first. And he said, okay, when we go, don't tell people you're Vietnamese because they're going to lie and cheat to you and treat you terribly. And I wasn't really sure about that. But then we got there, and then I saw my dad was very guarded. But then this beautiful thing happened where we started kind of opening up, and then he would just tell people randomly, oh, I'm Vietnamese, and I haven't been home in 44 years. And they would welcome him with opening arms, say, "Oh, you're my brother," or you're my son, you're my nephew, and these are strangers, and they say, "Hey, come over to our place. We'll treat you to dinner," and very welcoming. And then over the course of the months that I was there with my dad, I saw my dad completely open up, and he became to like love the country. And of course, I love the country because everyone was very welcoming. And then there's this amazing expat community there too, a lot of foreigners and Americans who are also very welcoming. And it's a very freeing and beautiful place, and completely abolishes what I thought it was. And it is a country that is on the uprise, and they are still dealing with the effects of the war and things like that. But it's there's still some poverty there, but overall, I saw a lot of beautiful things I wasn't expecting, and it made me proud to be Vietnamese for the first time in my life. So it was a beautiful experience.
Yeah, and the media can be spun in a negative direction when it comes to like any kind of foreign place. You know, this you're in the media to an extent. So growing up in Portland, Beaverton specific, it's well documented. It's a primarily white town. So for you being Vietnamese and coming in, did you feel like growing up, when you think back to, did you ever feel like there was a lot of stress build up on your chest, and then you're just like, oh, I feel a little tight, a little tense? And then once you had this experience, did you just feel like, oh, I can finally breathe again? Or was it like, as you saw like some movies growing up and how they were portraying Vietnam as this beautiful place where you're just like, oh, I can ease back a little bit on this kind of tension I'm feeling just because of my race?
Mm-hmm. I think growing up, I didn't experience the tension because I didn't know any better. When, first day of kindergarten, I remember on the playground, and then some kids ran up to me. They pulled their eyes back and were like, ching chong ching, whatever it said, this gibberish, and I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what they were doing. And then, growing up, there's all these little instances that happen where I was made fun of for being Vietnamese or Asian, and then it became normalized to me, and I didn't think anything of it just because I didn't know how to talk about it, or no one really spoke about it to me. And then it wasn't until later in life, probably like college and after I grew up and actually started kind of pursuing life in the media, where I started to feel that tension, and then I started running up against into seeing some racist things in some productions I was in, or in some casting and audition notices I saw. And at first, I didn't know that it was okay for me to talk about this stuff, because at that time, whenever I tried to speak about it, I felt like I was kind of gaslit and just kind of, you're making a big deal out of nothing by my peers. And that just kind of grew and built and built and built. And then it's true, when I went to Vietnam, I did experience a release that I wasn't aware of things I was holding on to.
Yeah, and then you also have this great connection with your dad. Now, it's been a long time since I've seen your family, your parents, so I'm not sure what your relationship with your dad was leading up to that trip, and then how it changed after that trip.
Yeah, it's I don't know, my relationship with my dad was very interesting, because he's very old school, from the different generation and a different culture. So growing up, he was very all about discipline. And over the years, he softened up a little bit, and then I saw a lot of softness coming out of him in Vietnam, and that was a very beautiful thing to see. And it helped me see a whole different side of him, and helped me understand where he came from. Because I think before, I didn't do any work in trying to understand what kind of life he had, how hard it must have been coming here when he was a youth, and then facing a lot of racism, and then trying to build a family, and having to give up all hopes and dreams to raise a family. And then and that month I spent with him was most of the time I ever spent with him in kind of one continuous grouping. So I think it did help a lot.
Yeah. Were you just, because I know sometimes with my dad not living, I don't see him as
Mm,
often because he's busy with
mm,
work and life.
mm,
I know sometimes when I'm stuck in a car with him or going to like get some food, I'm
mm.
like, what do I talk to him about? Did you have those moments where you're just like, oh, you have some silence, or like, oh, I feel like I should say something, or just, were you just kind of writing it out?
Oh yeah, no, all the time. My dad, he's not a talker. He's not. And yeah, there were a lot of times, a lot of silence, um, meal times together. But then, it was great since if we were in Vietnam, it was like, oh hey, look at this and that, look at this beautiful, look what's happening across the street. You
Yeah.
could use that as kind of like a buffer, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, because I'm sure, like you just mentioned, a lot of guys' relationships with their dad, you can't always talk about everything, or if you have a stoic father like mine and probably like yours, you mentioned, it's like you try to start a conversation. It's like, yep, and that's it.
Or he would just interrupt, like, huh? It's like, I just had two words. Why are you just asking what I just said?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, to my memory,
Mm-hmm.
which I've had a couple concussions in my life, so I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
dependable it
Okay.
is,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I remember your dad was in a movie we filmed together when we were kids. I think it was like an Asian themed where he just turned to the camera and he said that you broke his noodles, or like, I
Oh
don't know if you
God.
remember that.
Yeah,
how much
that
how much convincing did you have to get your dad to get him to be on camera with you during that?
very little,
Very
very
little.
little. He jumped at it. Yeah, that was a film that I wanted to do as an homage to a Jackie Chan film.
Mhm.
Because he was a big influence on me. So then we did this homage, like old school kung fu type of film, and I can't remember. I think it was probably my dad's idea where he wanted to play the villain
Yeah.
and be the evil master that the young pupil disciple had to fight at the end. And I don't know that noodle idea. I think he saw that in some a film that was parodying kung fu films. I think maybe it was Kung Pao, Enter the Fist, or something of that
Yeah.
caliber. And I
Yeah.
know he
Yeah.
just he ripped that joke from that movie, but we didn't do it as well. And it was kind of like an iffy joke to begin with. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, we were just stealing ideas from things we saw and then trying to throw it together for a school project. But I mean, it was fun, and he was always very supportive of my aspirations to be a filmmaker, which I'm very thankful for because I know a lot of Asian parents don't have the attitude towards the arts. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. And so where did this passion for filmmaking, the film industry, acting, all of that kind of,
Mm-hmm.
can you pinpoint it to a specific moment, or just the time where you're like, this is actually pretty cool, and then
Mm-hmm.
I could probably keep doing this?
Mm-hmm. I think, well, my dad always screened films for me growing up. We watched a lot of movies together. And I was probably around 5 when he introduced me to Bruce Lee. And of course, a lot of Asian men. I was like, oh man, who is this guy? What is he doing? I want to do that. And I didn't know that was meant being acting in films. I just wanted to do what he was doing because I'd never seen someone like him on a movie screen. But then from there, I was introduced to Jackie Chan. And The Fearless Hyena was my first Jackie Chan film. And then I started to immediately gravitate towards him more because Bruce Lee is very much that stoic, tough guy. I'm here. I'm gonna punch and kick everyone out. And Jackie Chan is more of that. Oh, his early kung fu movies is more of that rapscallion, getting into trouble, that youthful energy, which is what I kind of gravitated to, and of course the comedy. And then from there, Jackie Chan's filmography, he always kind of plays the underdog. And I always really appreciated that because, in all these action movies, kung fu movies, you always know that the guy's going to win at the end. But with Jackie Chan, you want to see, oh, how does he get there? Because he's always outnumbered. He's always at a disadvantage, which is why he has to be creative and use all these props, use all these, different tactics to win. And that's always very interesting because that story of, being the underdog and how am I going to come out on top through perseverance and that not giving up attitude, which I think is great.
Yeah, that definitely things you can carry on, from that point when you discovered
Mm-hmm.
Jackie Chan on to where you are today and further. And also, Jackie Chan is very famous for doing his own stunts and his
Mm-hmm.
own, acrobatics. He's also well known for getting extremely hurt during those kind of
Mm-hmm.
moments. So, again, leading up to me scheduling this interview with you or just confirming, David Rodriguez, I don't know if you remember him.
Oh yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
He's back in Portland, and then him and I and my brother and his wife were all eating dinner, and I
Oh
brought
nice.
him up,
Mm-hmm.
and then he was like, "Yeah, I remember I was in an action movie with him, and I punched him, and I was like, oh God, I'm so sorry,' and then he just
Mm-hmm.
rolled with it."
Mm-hmm.
So, being an actor that wants to do some action, how have you gotten hurt? Have you
Mm-hmm.
kind of avoided that injury bug when it comes to trying to follow in that homage of Jackie Chan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, since then, yeah, I've been fortunate enough to do some fight scenes and action stuff and some short projects I did, and then some other independent projects for other people. And I haven't gotten hurt as much as with David. And I should point out that it was completely my fault that he punched me because I ducked when I was supposed to weave back, I think. So, or because he was throwing an uppercut, so I ducked right into his hand. So,
Oh.
and I remember he had a whole swollen hand, which I still
Uh,
feel bad about that because it was completely my fault. But yeah, since then, yeah, safety is a big thing because you don't want to get hurt all the time, and in the projects that I've done since then, I don't remember getting hurt as bad. And of course, little nicks and bumps and little things happen here and there, but that's just the nature of the beast. Um, I did a feature film in February, early March, right before COVID. And it wasn't an action script. It was like a psychological horror, but my character was supposed to get killed. And then the scene was someone slamming my head into like a dumpster. And they had a stunt double for me, but me being just like, oh, I'm tough, I can do it. I was like, okay, I'll do it myself. And then the actor who was slamming my head wasn't a stunt man, but he was a very nice guy, great guy to work with. But he didn't know what he was doing, and the director just kept saying more, harder. So then yeah, I mean that my head slammed into the dumpster a few times, but it wasn't too bad because the actor was kind of fooling it a little bit, but stuff like that happens,
yeah,
and you can't really. And that was a low budget feature, so
yeah,
what can you do?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I before we started, I showed you that I have a WWE belt over my left
Mm-hmm.
shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of sports entertainment is, people from that industry have gone on into the acting industry, like Dwayne Johnson, John Cena. So when you see that on TV, or if you can remember, and you see how they took a bump or how they were able to sell the hit, did you take
Mm-hmm.
any notes heading into, let's say, the UFC training movie that you did called A Story About a Fight?
Yeah, yeah. So that MMA film was really great, and it's tough because when you before that I did another film with a really great stunt coordinator, William Lung. He's worked on the Avengers and things like that, and then his philosophy was like, if you're doing body hits and things like, you give the guy a little love tap. It's okay,
Yeah.
you train for it and you make a little contact, and that's fine. And I'm totally cool with that. But then when we did A Story About a Fight, we didn't have a stunt coordinator on that set to kind of give the go ahead on that. We only had, and so we and the stunt, the fighting was done by the director, who was a very skilled and avid mixed martial artist, and we were, and the guy I fought with, we were all mixed martial artists, and we felt good doing those love taps, those body hits. But it was a little dicier because, of course, we're just in trunks. You
Yeah.
can't have pads or anything. But it was tough because the first AD, the first assistant director on film sets, who was very much in charge of safety, you know, she wasn't necessarily experienced with this. She was just doing her job, and she was great at her job, but she did not want us to make contact with one another. And so we were kind of butting heads about that. And, but the director and the guy who was fighting, we kind of how I was like, let's just do this. We'll get it. So that's what we did. And because sometimes that's how it looks good.
Yeah.
You know, if it's for the shot, then you do it. And I mean, and I know in Hong Kong Asian cinema, you know, they'll do faces and they'll just take the hit. Like you know, Donnie Yen, he's an action actor I really like, and he's kind of known for like going up to the stunt guys like, hey, you know, if you let me kick your hit you in the face, I'll give you a few hundred extra dollars. It's like, okay, yeah, to make the shot look good, totally worth it.
Has that been
Yeah,
offered? Has that been offered to you? Like, hey, let me actually punch you, and I'll give you an extra like grand or something like that.
no, not in America. They don't really do that much. But I did want to do that in a short film I did in high school. I don't know if you guys remember Brian Burton. He was a guy that I did a lot of training and fighting with in high school. But yeah, we did a shot where I wanted him to punch me in the face, and probably very ill-advised. We were just young kids at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's like, hey, you can take it. And it looks good on camera. And if it's on camera, it lasts forever. So, I mean, you know, it's that whole thing. You know.
In your defense, when we were about kids, Jackass the TV show was such a big hit.
Yeah.
So we were like getting ourselves hurt
Uh-huh.
because we're trying to mimic what you see on TV.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
blame TV on that one.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And of course, for me too, it's like go ahead.
No, go ahead. Fish. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna be like, oh, you know what? Like you mentioned before, Jackie Chan does. He gets hurt all the time. If that's what it takes to be an action actor, then that's what you got to do.
So what was that training like leading up to the story about a fight shoots, and then coordinating that kind of UFC fight? Because coordinating like a street fight, I feel like I don't know how the fight choreography pyramid goes. Like, what's the most difficult? What's the least difficult? I would feel like UFC is kind of like up there.
Yeah, it's different. Because once again, the director who was in charge of that, he was an avid MMA fan. He wanted the fights to look real, to try to replicate MMA as realistically as possible. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of fights that you see in movies and real fights, they don't coincide. Like fights in movies are very unrealistic, and then you watch the UFC, that never looks like a movie. It's sloppy, it's messy. Things are not going right, and we try to replicate that as much as we can. But since we're making film, it still has to be aesthetically pleasing. So we're trying to find a middle ground, and I think the director did a great job of finding that kind of area to play in. And leading up into that. Yeah, I did a lot of training on myself just to kind of I try to stay in shape as best I can, but before I shoot like that, I go on a diet, I kind of tune up, just try to be in tip-top form, because the thing about that is, shooting those fights, you shoot like 10, 12 hours a day, like a fight scene, and that's very exhausting. And whereas, if you're doing like a real UFC fight or a boxing match, it's what you do the round 5 minutes each or whatever, and but then if you have to do 12 hours, I mean it's so tiring. So that's why you kind of have to get ready for that. And up until that, we had a lot of rehearsal, trying to get the action beats right, trying to make sure everything was safe and that we didn't hit each other. But yeah, just a lot of rehearsal, and it's like a dance. You hear that a lot. It's choreographed, and you just try to make it as safe as possible, and then get the rhythms right. But that kind of comes into a different kind of play, where the guy I was fighting was a very good a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, and I'm more of a striker. And so finding the rhythm was a little difficult, because it's like if you're trying to get the guy who does ballroom dance and the guy who does hip hop, you can do the same dance together. It's a little different, Yeah. So that was a struggle, but I think we made it work, because we just wanted the fight to look good at the
end. Yeah, and you seem like a driven guy, so I feel like if you have a picture has been engraved in your head or just shown to you, you want to try to match it as best as you can, especially when it comes to live action films. And so according to IMDb page, which you have, I'm not sure how accurate it is, but it says that you're in about 6 films, but you're in the film industry, including school, let's say about 12, 13 years. in your time doing, let's say, all these short films in college and then leading into outside of college, did you ever pay attention to how the director was, conducting himself, producers conducting themselves, behind the scenes stuff, or were you always just thinking about being in front of the camera?
It depends. There are some roles where I've had to do where are require a lot of emotional effort and to get in the necessary headspace. So on those, I do need to sequester myself a little bit just to kind of be and stay in that zone so that I can do the scene to the best of my ability. But on other projects where it's not so emotionally intense and I can relax a little bit, I do pay attention to what directors are doing, what everyone is doing behind set, because I still do have aspirations to make my own feature films, to direct, to produce. So I view every opportunity on set as a learning opportunity. So I really pay attention to what's going on, and plus I love it. It's my favorite thing, being on a film set. So why not try to absorb and take in everything that you're seeing? Because I think the whole process is magical, and it's chaos, but if the product comes out right, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
It's controlled chaos.
So tell me about the timetable, like let's say from an idea that you have to like the final edits, because I saw your quarantine video, which was fantastic, hilarious, nice amount of silent film type with a nice theatrical French movie music. So can you walk me through how the idea came about, and then how long it took for you to get to that final edit?
I think the whole process of that was 3 days, and I'm very fortunate. There are times I feel where I can kind of go into these like creative blackouts, where I don't know what happened, what's going on, but I wake up at the end and there's a finished product. Yeah. And that doesn't always happen. Sometimes it happens. 6 months, years in between. I feel when you can kind of find those moments. But yeah, I mean that just happened because that was right after LA went on lockdown, and there was a lot of fear, and it's like, oh no, what's going to happen? When can you start making movies and of course, I mean, there's so many more worse things happening in the world than just making movies. So what I needed to do was to kind of just do something to keep myself busy, to keep myself from like slipping into like depression or anything like that, and just to stay active. And I just wanted to capture like a moment in time that I thought was very interesting. And I didn't know that, if people would respond to it. I was like, is this just like a weird idea? But, since I turned 30, I've been kind of getting this mode of like, forget what people think, just do it. As long as it doesn't, don't offend you, but try to do within reason. But, do something that you think is, in good spirits, and it's all about the creative process. So, I mean, I thought of it just like one day. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I've always thought French films are very funny because that's something you study in school. I'm sure you've seen a couple and you're like, what the hell is going on in this movie? So, and there's sometimes they come up as so, pompous and I do like poking fun at that. And so, yeah, I just, I wrote a short script. And I just started filming in my apartment by myself with a tripod and on iPhone. And then, I just started filming, just kind of didn't really think much about it, and just did it a day to kind of edit. And then and that song was a song I had always really appreciated. And then, I just typed in like sad French songs, and that was the first one that popped up, and I recognized it. But okay, let me try editing it to this. And it just happened to work out. And it didn't get blocked on YouTube, which is very fortunate.
Yeah. Again, do you worry about that sometimes? You're like, will YouTube block this? Because it's such a mainstream like video service. Obviously, there's Vimeo, but with YouTube, it's like I've discovered how to do screen recording, so I feel pretty cool about that, both on my phone and on the computer. So I took maybe like 10, 15 seconds of like a title card for a Netflix film that was referenced in my last episode. I put it in there and I was like, am I gonna get in trouble? Am I good? Am I good? Do you ever worry about that when it comes to like ideas?
Did you get in trouble or is it fine?
I'm good for now. Let's wait and see.
We'll see what happens. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough, you know, because like, before making films ever since I was a kid, I always use written music. You know, you use film scores and film soundtracks. Like you know, like in the Civil War movie that you and I did, you know,
Yeah.
when we were in middle school. I used the song, the Matrix lobby shootout music for one of the scenes.
I
You
remember
know,
that.
because I thought, hey, this is a cool song. Let's throw it into this. And back then there was no YouTube. Because then you know we just showed that stuff to family and friends. And then since then, of course, with YouTube, yeah, you can't use copywritten music as much, especially you know if you're planning to submit it into film festivals and things like that. Either you get the license, which is very expensive, or you know, and plus there's so many resources now to buy rights to music from artists for affordable price or royalty free music. So that's the option now. But with the quarantine video, you know, I wasn't planning on making any money from it or sending it to
Yeah.
film festivals. I just wanted to do it. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to use a well-known French song for it. It worked out.
When you did the screenplay right for Dragonfly, did you have any
Mm.
specific songs or like anything from other movies you've seen you wanted to pull into that
Mm.
if it was to come
Yeah.
into, live action?
Yeah, that movie. It's a revenge thriller. It's it's about this couple that after they witness their daughter's kidnapping, the father becomes hell bent on revenge, and then the mother is on a path towards redemption, and then they set out on a mission that really challenges the relationship to kind of its breaking point. And you know, there's this resurgence in action now because for a while, you know, the Matrix kind of redefined action. Everyone wanted to do wire fu, slow motion, bullet time, and then Bourne Identity came out, and everyone was doing the shaky cam. You can't see what's going on. Here's a foot, here's a hand,
Yeah.
you know. And
Motion
then now,
sickness.
exactly. And then now, kind of John Wick is he's you know it's bringing it back to those long shots, you know, the well trained actors, you know, jujitsu, gun jitsu, what they call it now.
Oh
And,
yeah.
you know, but and showing more realistic form of fighting. And also, and so this film I wanted to emulate that kind of style, and also, you know, Indonesian film The Raid.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so Dragonfly, I wrote it to be a one location shoot, kind of like The Raid, where it's on one building.
Yeah.
Because I want to try and produce and direct this to keep the budget low. It's like, how can we do this? Okay, one location, you can use a couple rooms and redress it in a different way, so it's a different room. And for this one, I wrote the fight scenes to be really specifically because I do want to demonstrate a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA. Because I don't think it's been done properly yet. I mean, I know just a couple of days ago I saw this movie trailer for a film called Jiu-Jitsu, Nicolas Cage, about fighting aliens. They don't
Yes.
show.
I vaguely heard about it, like,
Right.
quickly.
I mean, it's Nick Cage in a headband and with the sword. But you don't see any jujitsu in
Yeah.
the film. So it's like, and it's like, I would like to see it used in a film more, and especially because the way I want to do this film, revenge movies are solely usually about the man. His wife is killed, or his, you know, and then he seeks vengeance, or the wife is just a side character who's like, oh, you know, don't do it, you'll get hurt or whatever. You know, so for this one, I wanted to see what would happen if the husband and wife go in this together and by their dynamic, and then how they kind of play off of each other within the revenge kind of through line, but also how they play off each other within the fight scene. Because for me, when I just started training jujitsu, it would be amazed how, you know, I feel like I'm pretty strong and fit. And then I would start rolling or sparring in jujitsu with a woman who's probably half my size, and she would just dominate me. It's like she would do whatever she wanted to me, despite how hard I was straining and huffing and puffing. I was just at her every whim, and I was like a rag doll for her. And I thought, that's amazing. You know, it's like if more women could see that in the film and see, oh, I mean, there's this power in martial arts and in self-defense, and I kind of want to see that in how that would play out in the fight scene. And that was kind of the goal behind this as well. to see that dynamic of how jujitsu can actually work pretty effectively. How a woman could take on a guy twice her size. Basically.
Yeah, my dad, I think he got a black belt in jiu-jitsu like way, way long time
Oh,
ago.
really? Oh, no way! Wow.
I remember like going into our back storage closet and then seeing a bunch of his like martial arts trophies. So I'm not sure if
Yeah.
that's jiu-jitsu or whatever it could be.
Yeah.
But he always said that leverage and was the best
Mm-hmm.
way for someone smaller to get over someone
Yeah.
bigger. And
Mm-hmm.
he was trying to teach me that during wrestling, but young, hard-headed. And I was like, no, Dad, you're not a wrestling
Right.
coach. You don't tell me what to do. And I'm like, dang, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Which I don't know how legal some of those jiu-jitsu moves would be in wrestling. I don't know if that would work. Get a guy in an arm bar or a leg lock or
And
something.
then just snap it.
Right. Yeah.
So, you talk about schooling a little bit ago. You went to school in LA for the Film Study Center. What was that education process like? Also, just going out of Oregon and just heading down south to this big city. Where was your head at when that move was going on?
Yeah. Well, actually, I went to college in Texas. That's where I did my undergrad. And the LA Film Studies was a semester-long program, sort of a study abroad sort of thing.
Okay.
So I did that my last semester of college because I was planning to come out to LA anyway. And come out to LA, of course, I had that doe-eyed, oh my God, big city, movie business, Hollywood sign in the distance. I was just awestruck. Yeah. And then I had an internship in a very high profile, like a casting studio with under a casting director, which I didn't know at the time. Internship, what is it? I work for free? What is this?
Yeah, I'm still at that mindset.
Yeah. This isn't fair. But then I was getting exposure and experience in the business. And then it was crazy when so-and-so would walk in or so-and-so would be on the phone and I'd be like, and it was a good exposure to the business, but it was sort of a bit of a realistic wake up because, I studied theater in Texas and I was the only Asian person. And they always told me, oh, you're Asian. And there's not a lot of Asian actors out there, so you're a shoo-in for whatever. But then once I came to LA, I was like, yeah, maybe there's not as many Asian actors, but there's still a heck of a lot, and the roles are not that much, so it's still very competitive. And plus, a lot of Asian actors who do martial arts. Yeah, I mean, the crazy. I started training at Joining All Movement, which is a gym in LA where a lot of stunt actors train, and there's a whole bunch of people who look like me, who can do what I do or do much better. Like I remember when I went to LA for the first time, and I went to an audition, and then I walked in, and there's everyone else who looked just like me or very, very similar, a very same type, fit, athletic, Asian, does martial arts, and that was a wake up call. Like, oh, this is still very competitive, and nothing's guaranteed. Yeah.
Yeah. So in Texas, you mentioned that people like, oh, you're the only Asian.
Mm-hmm.
How much of a fight did you give when you came to those typical Asian roles? So, like the villain or, some older wise men. Were you slightly hesitant in taking some of those because, it is too stereotypical and you want to make yourself different? Or you're just like, I also need the experience. This could help in the long run. Or where were you at?
Yeah, that's tough. Well, I started really bumping into that because actually after LA, I did a showcase and I got an agent. I was based in New York, so I moved to New York, and I was there for a year. And that's where there was another big wake-up call because that's another big city. And then the auditions I started getting, I noticed, were not the most flattering or generous. And then when I came to LA, I noticed it started getting worse. Where I noticed where a lot of times, if there was an Asian character in the role, it was to serve as the butt of a joke, or there was some quality of the character that, like for example, there was this audition for this rom-com, and the character that I was auditioning for was specifically written as Asian because the joke had to do with how Asian men are sexually inept or, unattractive in some way. And that one, I actually didn't end up going to. I almost went, but there was a lot of pushback. And it's tough because it's like, this is a role that might get me more exposure, but at what cost? And it's tough because when you're a minority trying to break into a business where there's no opportunity, like, do you take the opportunities that are given to you, or do you push back and fight back? And that was tough a few years ago. Things are slowly changing, slowly getting better, but that's a lot of stuff that I faced before. Or it's like, this role requires me to do a very stereotypical Asian accent for no other reason besides that's what people perceive Asian people as. And sometimes I would fight back, like, do I have to do an accent? And they're like, no, but just do it. It's fine, things like that. And yeah, things are slowly getting better in vlog. It's very slowly. It's still a struggle, but.
Yeah, I kind of wonder what the behind the scenes film culture is going to be like once, since we have this Black Lives Matter movement, we're trying to get equality for everyone. And, you mentioning all these things that have happened to you in the past, it's like, I see it's going to be a change for the good, but it's just a matter of, it's slowly progressing, but it's like, come on, guys, let's speed it up a little bit. So
yeah.
Yeah.
But one interesting thing that I found is, like, the movie I mentioned I did earlier this year. It was the first role I got that was non-race specific, and it was crazy because when I didn't think I was going to get it because, of course, it was, I only got on things that specifically called for an Asian actor. But so when I got this, I remember I got very self-conscious. The whole time I was thinking, I'm not right for this. I think they should just got like a white actor. And I didn't realize I had been programmed in this way because of my experience and talking to other minority actors feeling that same way too, this imposter syndrome, where it's like, oh no, I shouldn't be here. They probably should have gotten a white actor because that probably went better. And like how unhealthy that is. So I think, we do need to keep pushing the conversation and pushing it forward. So yeah.
Yeah, and so with that mindset, also you doing the UFC a story about a fight film. You were shirtless. Did you have any kind of body image issues after you saw, like, let's say, the first take of whatever scene you were shooting, or did you have any body confidence like after seeing that first one? Because I know for myself, I'm a runner and I also do weightlifting, but I'm still never going to be satisfied with my body because I think it's also the Asian genes where, like, I can diet, I can do all this, but one grain of rice down the hill.
Exactly, and I don't know, maybe it's good. I know the Asian grandma thing where you see her one time and she's like, oh, you're too skinny, you need to eat more. Next time you see her, she's like, oh, you're too fat. You eat too much. I think that really kind of burns itself in your brain in a really unhealthy way. And also, body image is the whole thing. Because, again, for me, the first Asian guy I saw on screen was Bruce Lee. And man, talk about unrealistic standards, And it's like, and a lot of roles I had gotten in college even required me to be shirtless and to look a certain way. And I'm saying it's not as bad as women have it sometimes. The expectations for women, I think, is grossly unfair in a lot more ways. But yeah, I think across the board in the business, body image is an unhealthy thing. And I did take that to me. With me on that story about a fight shoot. And especially it didn't help too because in that gym we shot at, there was no air conditioning. And we shot it last year in October, but it was still very hot. So inside it was very humid, probably at least 100 degrees in there. And we were doing a fight that was very strenuous. So, the first day I was just like chugging water. And then I remember seeing like some behind the scenes photos. And because I was just chugging so much water, I got completely bloated up, and became all this water away. And I got so self-conscious about it. And then I was on the side and then trying to, and then being like outside pumping weights, trying to jack myself up and all that stuff. But then looking back at those behind the scenes photos, several months later, I'm like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. It's okay. No one cares that much. Yeah.
So acting as a whole, it's such a mental and physical exertion. And who do you go to when you need someone to tell you that it's okay, what you're doing is the best for you? How do you get that kind of mental like stability or just mental relief knowing that, because I kind of question myself sometimes when it comes to maybe this
Mm-hmm.
podcast, for example. I'm like,
Yeah.
am I really doing this? Like, what am I doing this
Mm-hmm.
for? And then
Yeah.
I talk to, let's say, my brother, and he's just like,
Mm-hmm.
you're doing a great job. He's
Mm-hmm.
been like kind of a key factor in help me continuing on with this passion
Mm-hmm.
project. Who do you
Yeah.
go to kind of get your mental health check, basically?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that's great to bring up because before I didn't have anybody. Before I was willfully kind of by myself and pushed people away and was like, no, I can do this by myself. I'm tough. I'm a man. Any kind of negative feelings, I can just stifle them down and take it. And then that just started breeding a lot of unhealthy thought patterns and unhealthy way of living for me. And then recently, I started just opening up and just talking to anyone I could about what I was feeling. And I felt like that was a huge relief and realizing that just, talking about my insecurities and things I'm feeling doesn't make me weak. It doesn't make me less of a man. It's okay to talk about feelings, um, and I was amazed. Oh, people actually are willing to listen and hear
Yeah.
and give advice. And that's great. You mentioned the thing about the podcast because I think we all have that little voice in our head that makes us doubt ourselves, and I think that's great that you're powering forward and just doing it. You're talking to your brother, and not letting that voice consume you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard to fight that voice sometimes,
Yeah.
but
Mm-hmm.
it depends on who you surround yourself with. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you opening up and you agreeing to be on this podcast is just it's such an exciting experience. And you were very open about your sobriety. So I
Mm-hmm.
was wondering if you could shine a light and just tell me, how did that come about? I understand like the acting industry, the film industry can be very stressful and
Mm-hmm.
physical, mental, like we just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about your sobriety with me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but yeah, I struggled with alcoholism for about 7 years. And I think the signs were always there. I think, and I'm no authority on addiction or recovery. I'm just this is just stuff that I've learned on my journey. But I feel like there's a lot of factors that went into it. Like I remember having my first sip of beer when I was 8, and I feel like there's a lot of genetic factors that go into it. There's a lot of life experience factors that go into it. So I've always had a very addictive personality, and I've always felt like I didn't belong. Growing up Asian, feeling alienation, and then also growing up with a very kind of being taught old school values where be a man, don't cry, don't show emotion, and I think all of that kind of lends itself to an addictive mindset where when I was in college, that's when I got really into fitness, and that was kind of my first time addictive behavior really like kind of grew out of me. Where I wouldn't hang out with people. I would just work out and diet profusely because I wasn't happy with myself. I was trying to find validation through other means, and I was feeling all these things, these emotions that I didn't know how to talk about. I didn't know how to express it. So I thought, oh, by maybe building up my exterior, I could make this bulletproof armor that would protect my inside when I wasn't working on what was really bothering me. And then last semester in college, that's when I really started drinking heavily. Because in college with everybody, the drinking culture was like, oh,
Yeah, yeah,
right,
yeah.
let's do shots, let's get wasted, chug, chug, chug.
Mhm.
And it's great. Some people can do that and then they can turn it off. But for me, I started, I would be very studious, work out very hard during the week, and on the weekend, oh man, I love to party. I love just to get smashed, get blackout drunk. And that last semester of college, it was I actually ended up going to a Christian school. So this film studies program was a Christian program. We weren't allowed to drink, and so I would just go sit in my car in the parking lot and drink by myself and get drunk. And at no point did I think that was odd. So I think that was a sign that, oh, maybe I am an alcoholic. But from there, it just kind of spun out of control. When I moved to New York and then moved to LA, I just started isolating myself more, and I didn't know how to talk about my feelings, because like I said, men don't talk about their feelings. That's what I was taught. So the only solution I found for escape was to drink, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And I would just isolate myself in my apartment, didn't go out, didn't do anything. Um, yeah, and it just spun out of control from there until I realized I need to get help. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do have that addictive personality also when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
something I'm liking. So yeah, I said this podcast, maybe running, exercising,
Mm-hmm.
and most recently I realized, the thrill of the chase when it came to like a single guy trying to chase a girl. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of the addictive high that I was starting to feel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Over the past year, I've gotten sober. I celebrated 1 year sobriety on September 24th of this year. So yeah, really grateful for that. And still a struggle because we're still working through it. This is going to be like a lifelong journey, sobriety and mental health. It doesn't get solved overnight or over a course of a year. It's a continuous thing. And I think, that kind of stuff also needs to be talked about more because I'm finding a lot of people are going through it and a lot of people need help, but they don't know where to turn to.
I remember I started seeing a therapist. I want to say
Great.
maybe last year or the year before.
Oh,
It was last year. So I only saw
yeah.
him for a short period of time because I was dealing with a pretty hard breakup. And
Yeah.
it really helped me open up also because I've noticed that while I got a degree in journalism and communications, I had a hard time communicating. That second part of the degree, I was just like, why am I having a hard time with this? So,
Yeah.
so since I'm no longer seeing him, but I am actually looking to get back into therapy just because while it is great to have this platform to talk about these topics with you, so sometimes it's like there are things that I just need help with. And
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I remember it was such a hard thing to say that to my family and saying like, hey, I saw a therapist because of that old school mentality where you have to be tough, you have to just figure out yourself and don't ask for help. And really happy I did. I'm really happy you are too. And you have such a great support system now.
Yeah. And it's crazy because that there is that stigma on mental health. Like, when you mention, oh, I'm seeing a therapist, people kind of, whoa, but it's just like anything. It's like, I once heard it described as, if someone had a broken leg, you wouldn't make them go run a marathon. If someone needs to heal some part of their brain, you couldn't expect them to deal with certain challenges in life and everything. It's all about just healing things that need the attention, and it's okay.
Yeah. It's I'm just happy that it is becoming more of a mainstream topic. Like it's just because you just never know. Some things that happen in life, and you don't know how it's going to carry on with you throughout your life.
Exactly.
So my last film type themed question is that I believe it was 2018. A film came out called Crazy Rich Asians. And we were talking during this whole interview about how Asian representation wasn't as high and it kept growing. As that film came out, where it is, let's say 99% Asian. I saw like one white guy and he was a server. What was that kind of movie, like that kind of impact did that movie have in the Asian film culture community?
Yeah. There was a lot of excitement over it to see how it would affect things. And I don't know, frankly, to me, I haven't seen much of a change since that movie came out, unfortunately. But like I said, these things don't happen overnight. But I will say it was very exciting, and there was a sense of validation because I remember sitting in the movie theater. I was right in the middle, surrounded by a bunch of people, and it was packed, and people were watching this film with a bunch of people who looked like me and represented, my family and my culture. And they were laughing, they were crying, they were enjoying it. And that was very validating to hear, especially, when being in the business for a few years and feeling like your voice didn't matter, where, seeing Asian characters being played by white actors and being told that, you such and such is not racist, you're just being overly sensitive. to see that on the big screen was very exciting. And there was excitement about Mulan, but unfortunately that kind of got derailed for some controversy and some other issues. And then I mean Shang-Chi, the Asian superhero for Marvel, that's
Yeah.
filming and chicken. So I mean that's exciting. And there's just a hope that I hope that this keeps moving. And I am seeing more things of like non-specific race casting being more of a thing, and I'm getting sent into more auditions where I'm not playing specifically an Asian person, and it's happening. But I've been told it's been happening for the past 8 years or so, and one thing that I think is unhealthy is that I hear from casting directors and agents like, oh, Asians are hot right now. Like, what does that mean? It's like, that does mean we're just a fad?
Are we on fire?
Yeah, you're right. It's like, this isn't just a fad. This is like a culture. This is a whole group of people that have voices and have stories. And that's where I want to take like my films and the things I start writing about, be telling more of the Asian American experience. Because I feel comfortable talking about that stuff now, whereas before I wasn't. So, that's where it's all leading to.
Yeah. And when I said that was my last film question, that was a lie. I actually have a couple more. So we were talking before I asked that question about your mental health and what it took to open up and be a better you. So I saw on your demo reel, you did a movie called Family First. I couldn't find more info on that film, but from what I saw, you were in a female attire, and talk more about that movie and what was it about?
Oh, I really loved that project. It was just a little independent short film, but it was a very emotional story based on the characters, the director's own experience. And I played a young man who was gay, and then he was just kind of battling his very traditional, old school Chinese mother on like coming out to her. And the scene that you probably saw was just me in like emo attire, wearing makeup, and being thrown out of the house and being scolded and berated by his very old value driven mother. And I loved seeing that. When I read the script, I was just like, this is amazing, because I didn't see enough of that. Because usually Asian stories are very action centric, sort of kung fu action thing, and this happens in Asian. It happens in every community. There's people who are struggling with their identity in many different ways, and unfortunately, I feel like with a lot of Asian families, anything that's not perceived as normal, and it is really, really frowned upon. So this story was so heartfelt and so beautiful, and I think it went into some film festivals, but also for me that was great, because I don't usually get those type of opportunities. Usually I get opportunities where I have to kick or punch someone, and so this one, it was very different for me, playing a very vulnerable character, and it was also good exercise for me to really tap into that more vulnerable side and tell a very honest story that you don't see reflected a lot in the Asian driven cinema.
Where all this emotion come from? Because for me, if I want to cry on command, I think about let's say a brother movie, and I see a brother dying, because I'm really close to my brother. No, let me rewind. Actually, it was a friend from high school who passed away because of military reasons, and I was at his funeral, and I saw his brothers just crying, and that's what I think about if I need to, if I'm feeling emotional but I can't get the tears out. What did you think about that helped you tap into that deep, or just those emotions?
I think it all is a part of me of just retapping into my emotions in general, and it's stripping away that wall of not being able to feel anything. And a really great acting teacher in LA, Elizabeth Mesnick is her name. I feel like she did some sort of voodoo magic on me, but her whole thing is just like really feeling the emotion of whatever it is and learning what that feels like. And we had to do this exercise where we had to get emotional and cry and whatever. And then she pulled me to the side, and she put her hand on my chest, and she's like, what does it feel like to be sad? And she just looked deep into my eyes. And I don't know, something happened since then. It's like, what does it feel like to be sad? So in that scene in Family First, where the woman playing my mother was screaming and yelling at me, I just got into that mindset. It's like, okay, what happened? And also, like in Stanislavski, it's called the what if. It's like, what if I was actually, gay? What if I was trying to come out to my mother? What if my mother was yelling at me, telling me I'm no good? I'm not her son anymore. She's throwing me out of the house and she's disowning me. What would that feel like? And just trying to strip away any kind of walls you have up and really feeling that, putting yourself in that moment. I think that's what acting is all about, and I think that's what all actors are trying to get to, just experiencing true, honest emotion and what they're experiencing. And I think when you can do that, it works beautifully.
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of position that question towards the end because when it comes to interviews, I try to I send for those fans listening and watching. I send Dom a topic sheet, and then it was not the sequence of how we were going to ask them. There was just things I wanted to ask and how they could intertwine into the conversation. So with you, we started out talking about all these masculine things, and then soften it up towards the end because it takes a lot of mental and emotional wear to switch on something, switch off something, especially when it comes to the depths that you have to go. So when it came to your Asian Film Lab 72-hour shootout, what emotions did you have to pull out for that one? Because it was a lot of, it was a deepness. It was kind of like, we were in a situation where I think you should explain it because I can explain, but this is a episode about you.
Yeah. That was a 72-hour film competition brought on by the Asian American Film Lab. And we were given a prompt and a theme to make a movie in that amount of time. And I chose to do something that I was just already feeling. The film festival was taking place in a quarantine edition sort of environment where we had to film everything within quarantine. And I was just bringing in emotions I was already feeling. By that time, let's see, I did that movie in like early July, I feel. By then, March, April, May, June, I'd already been in quarantine by myself for a few months, 3-4 months. And that was so difficult, I tried FaceTiming and talking with people, but we're social creatures. We need interaction with one another. So I was just doing a film about a guy who was in a pandemic. I decided to make my pandemic as like a zombie apocalypse sort of thing where things escalated. And he'd been by himself for a year. And then every day he was sending out these video logs, trying to connect to somebody. In the end, he eventually connected with someone, and he has this emotional experience. And that was at that time, it was very easy for me because I was already feeling those things. So I just turned on the camera and I just let it flow because I was having a very hard time. And that's why I do like making films, because you are able to capture such honest and pure emotion in ways that you couldn't otherwise. So in that case, that was very easy because I was just doing what I was already feeling. Yeah.
And then it won or got nominated again. What was that award process like?
So we submitted it, and then the film festival or the film just premiered at the virtually at the Asian American Film Festival that usually happens in New York, I believe. Mm-hmm. But so they kind of sent out these things gradually where my film made top 50, and then they mentioned it made top 10, which I was very happy about, and then it won the prize for most original use of theme, which I'm not quite I'm still not quite sure how it did that or what, but I'm very excited. And this was I entered this film competition to face a lot of fears. First, I never ever wanted to do any sort of film festival or film competition that had anything to do with Asian people, because I was in a time where I didn't want to be Asian, and I was so ashamed. But then after like going to Vietnam, doing all the self work, being proud of my heritage, and I was like, okay, I want to do an Asian film festival because I want to tell Asian stories. I want to be a part of of all these Asian filmmakers processes, and it was a step in the part of my self journey. And before I took a long break from doing any kind of film. So and then the quarantine video I told you, and then this one, it was the first stuff I'd done in several years because I was just in a place of listening to that inner voice of that was telling me, oh, don't do it. You're not good enough. No one's gonna like you. People are gonna hate it. And I listened to that voice for many years. So doing this Asian Film Festival was a huge step in my personal growth, and I was very happy I did it. I'm very happy that it got recognized for anything. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you did the work, and then you did your part as far as submitting it. So that's all that can be done.
Yeah, and that's it. And then you just let it up to the universe and see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to end my interviews with a little bit of fun. So I'm going to ask you, This is like 6 pages of hypothetical questions. I'm only going to ask you 2. I'm only asking you 2, not the whole 6.
All right.
Don't worry.
All right. Mm-hmm.
So the first one, if hide and seek were a major sport in the Olympics, what would it look like? Or what would it be like?
Oh, man. If hide and seek in the Olympics, I feel like it would have to take place in some sort of urban environment, whatever city the Olympics is taking place that year. And I feel like it would have to be, I don't know. Yeah. So like one country searches for another a team of one country searches for a team in another country. And I would like to see them apply parkour into it if it's in an urban environment. Because I know they have competitive tag now.
Yeah.
And it's very athletic, very agile. Like, let's do that with hide and seek. That'd be amazing.
I was just thinking that. I was like, what if it was like hide and seek, but a mix of like, I was thinking of maybe like Hunger Games, but without the killing. It's like in a kind of urban environment, but it's like worn down. So a lot of like empty buildings. Mm-hmm. That could be something you could film. Just putting it out there.
You heard it here first, folks.
My second question, since you're such a busy guy, I thought this would be appropriate. If you could accomplish simple tasks while sleeping and still get a good night's sleep, what would you want your body to do while you're sleeping? Actually, let's twist that a little bit. So if you could accomplish simple tasks while sleeping and still get a good night's sleep, what tasks would you want your body to do?
Oh man, just all the little things that add up to the day, like personal hygiene things. I don't know where I have to worry. If I could wake up, boom, ready to go like this. I woke up like this sort of thing, and meal prepping. If I could have meal prepping done, while I'm sleeping, paying bills, all that stuff, so I could devote every waking hour every day to creativity and productivity. Stuff like that.
Yeah, I know it's this mundane stuff of like meal prepping takes so much time, and like after this I'm gonna go get some groceries. But it's like, oh God, I don't want to do this. But if the sleeping Keoni could do it, then I am all for that. I will tip him. I will give him money for this.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good question. I like that.
Yeah, I saw. I don't know Stephen Amell. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he has a podcast, and then he always like starts out with this like one hypothetical question where like a snail is chasing after you, but you have the option of letting the snail touch you then die, or touch you then die, and then let's say a loved one gets like $1,200 or $12,000. So it's like you're gonna either A, let the snail kill you and your family member gets a lot of money, or B, you just live your life but knowing that the snail is somewhere in the neck of the woods, could be anywhere, but let's say you're here and then you go out back to LA, then the snail will be where you are right now. So it's a weird kind of fun question. I was like, I kind of want to do that. I want to see how All right, Dom, thank you so much for stopping by and talking. And this was absolutely amazing just because I get to catch up with you, because last time I saw you, I was a wee child.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, no,
real,
thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
yeah, real quick though, where can the people find you on social media or just anywhere?
Oh yeah, I'm not good about social media. I'm trying to do better, but Instagram at slash Dom Huynh. I think that's how that works. Yeah, just search Dom Huynh and I should be on there. And then I think there's a link to my YouTube on there. I don't have Twitter. I am on Facebook. Um, Dom Huynh, just search that and it should pop up. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not good at this sort of thing.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sticking around to the end of the interview. Do you have any questions for the guest? Put them in the comments below, then I'll get them answered for you. So if you like what you heard and you want to hear more from Keoni Chats, the show can be found on Spotify, Apple Music, and now Amazon Music. But if you want a video version, you can search Keoni Chats on YouTube, subscribe, and hit the bell button to get notified when a new episode is released. To stay connected with KC Media and Keoni Chats, you can follow KC Media 13 on both Instagram and Twitter. And then on Facebook, search Conlu K Media, and that will take you to KC Media's Facebook page. So if you'd like to be a guest, go ahead and direct message me on any of those social media platforms, or you can email me on kcmedia13@yahoo.com. So until the next episode, everyone, please take care.